No. Hello, and welcome to the best show to talk all things Holy War, the Holy Rivals. I'm your host, Nathan Bomber Brown, and with me is my partner in crime, the Wild Ute.
What's up, Bomber? How you doing?
Out causing trouble and taking names, I'm thinking.
Very nice.
I want to encourage everybody to hit the subscribe button and follow us on Twitter. And everything else you can read on a little scroll at the bottom of our screen here. Wild Ute, why don't you give everybody an idea of who you are and why it's important to listen to you?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a Utah football extremist, Bomber.
Uh-oh.
Season ticket holder. Yeah, it's trouble, I know. And I actually live in Salt Lake City and lived here for 25 years, so I understand the nuances of the Holy War rivalry, which are very different than other rivals.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
So today for this show, I was hoping that we could go through and give the Ute football fans perspective on BYU, on where BYU stands in the eyes of a Utah football fan. And huge caveat, we're not talking about all Utah football fans. We're talking about some, but there is a portion that really do think this way.
All right, very good. Yeah, I'm here. I'm ready to listen. I think most BYU fans really want to hear from somebody that's measured, thoughtful, honest, but passionate about the Holy War itself and the University of Utah.
Well, absolutely. And a little bit more about Wild Ute. So really, I've been watching college football ever since I was a little kid. The name Wild Ute actually comes from two origins. I'm a K-State Wildcat fan, but I'm a Utah Utes diehard. When I was growing up, I grew up in a household of K-State graduates. Everybody was a K-State fan. And I remember multiple times when I was a kid watching games and tough losses, having a hard time, and even crying sometimes during those games. But then over time, I actually went to school in Utah during the Urban Meyer era, and also back to school when Utah after they joined the Pac-12 in 2008.
Great time to become a fan.
Yeah, definitely. It was the glory days of Utah football here. So a little bit about me. Again, I love the Utes. Try to go to every game. Travel to a bunch of games in the past. Notre Dame, Florida, and I went to the Rose Bowl, Ohio State, and love me my Utes here.
Well, I think that's really good because you're out on an island right now. To be a Ute fan is to be very brave.
I'm hoping we can cure some feelings here that a lot of folks have about the Utes, because
I certainly hope so. Yep, that's what we want to do.
I don't think a lot of people realize where Utah's coming from. And Utah, this culture in our state, so different than everywhere else that I was hoping to clarify some of that today, and get into the intricacies here of how Ute fans really see their rival, and even if we get into it, and how they see the Big 12 too, because right now with realignment rolling around, I mean, that is what everyone wants to talk about. Where is Utah going to end up? Where are the four corners going to end up? Is it going to be in the Big 12 elsewhere? Where's the pack going to go? It's all relevant to this topic. But really, first, we need to light the fire here and talk about where Utah fans see BYU.
So I think what's really important to keep in mind is that Utah's standing over the last 12, 13 years has skyrocketed, and it's been a well-earned reputation. And I think that there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that went into that. Urban Meyer started that turnaround. Ronnie Mack was a great coach, but he and Lavelle Edwards were, let's just say it, old men. And for Urban Meyer to come in and revitalize the Holy War, and then on top of that, make the import.
Revitalize the Holy War. Hey, come on, let's reverse back here. Let's take a history lesson right now.
Okay.
So Ronnie Mack came in 1990, right? Urban Meyer was 2003. So there was 12 years there where Utah came back and made that competitive historically.
Okay.
So everyone needs to know this, okay? So Utah has had a great run the last 15, 20 years versus BYU, right?
Yep.
I think that's undisputable. But when you're looking at historically, in the 70s and 80s, the Cougars had a run, right? And they won mostly every game. And then in 1990, something shifted, and that was the hiring of Ronnie Mack.
Okay, keep going. I'm listening.
So
I'm at
hands
school
running
here.
up. So the wins started piling up more. In the 90s, Utah started winning about what 35-40% of the games, if I had
That's
to guess,
right.
right? And beforehand, they hadn't won anything. So for
Right.
many years, and then when Urban Meyer came, I mean, Utah's really just been on a tear with wins versus BYU.
Right.
So it's
Well,
a
that's absolutely true.
yeah, the Ron McBride hire was enormous and stuff, and that really kind of laid the Utah foundation to even bring in someone like Urban Meyer with the talent that was there, and then build off of what Urban Meyer did. And Kyle Whittingham's taken it to another level here, and now that we're in the pack and all. But really, a lot of history there.
And I'm not putting Utah down for any of it. I think it because Utah has no bragging rights when it comes to the overall number. It's like 66 and 35 or something. It's ridiculous, right? And that's because BYU didn't have a football program before Lavelle Edwards was
Oh, wow.
hired.
Whoa.
That's a fact. When Gary Scheide came in and really he kicked it off, and that last 50 years is where we've been, and that's where it was built. Before then, BYU was no competition for the University of Utah.
That's right. That's right. And more recently, I would make the argument that's been the case too. Outside of this last win,
Well, they both go 9-year stretches, though. In the last 50 years, they both have 9-year stretches where they were undefeated. So in the last since 1972, the record is 30-25, and BYU actually has that 5 games. But outside of that, the history is on the Ute side.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's get into really from a local standpoint here. Okay. Being a local kid in Salt Lake, some of the intricacies again of this rivalry. So I remember from a young age. Okay, so I remember it. I actually remember being a K-State fan in the 1997 Cotton Bowl.
Okay,
that's the first time I had experience really with BYU folks and stuff. That was
right.
a game where BYU won, and I think that's what started my dislike of the Cougars, if you could say that.
Well, I mean, there was be a reason for that because K-State had a good team, so that makes sense.
We had just moved from different states to Utah. We had some BYU folks over, and as a kid, I got it pretty hard and stuff. So that's why I think that was my first impressions of BYU, right?
Okay.
I think growing up as a kid in Utah too, there's so many different dynamics here that are into play, like with religion, for example.
Right.
Like a lot of the BYU fan base is LDS, whereas a lot of the Utah fan base, it's about maybe half and half. But there's a good portion of the Utah fan base, that isn't LDS, that might have had some experiences when they're younger and stuff that made that even a little bit more emotional, you could say, and feelings of bringing the rivalry to a different level. That's not just football. And then that kind of speaks to really what the Holy War is. I mean, it's huge, not just in sports, but in everything. People in Utah, we talk about the Holy War all the time. At work, everywhere else, we're always bantering. People have probably seen on Twitter. I mean, it is really a big deal out here.
Yeah, I don't think that we were speaking about this in the pre-show. I've over the last 9 months, as people have started getting notice of the Holy War out in the world, in my opinion, because of politics, because of family, because of religion, I think the Holy War is top 5, and I think I can justify that and make that argument with a straight face. Now, you're going to have people claiming all other rivalries around the United States, but that game by itself, there's only one reason that a guy from Oklahoma knows who BYU is, and that's because they know what the Holy War is.
Yeah, the Holy War is everything. It has to be a top 5 rivalry. What's better than it? Ohio State, Michigan? Then you're Army, Navy. Okay, I can see those things, but really, Florida, Georgia, are we talking like
the Iron Bowl? The Iron Bowl's big. Yeah. Auburn, Alabama, and between the hedges is Florida and Georgia. That's a big one.
Those are big ones. They do not bring the complexity into a rivalry like we do.
No, because religion and politics. Yeah,
this rivalry.
You're exactly right. Yep.
And unless you go to a game, then you won't understand it. I mean, unfortunately, the distribution historically too It's been late night, not prime time and everything. So it hasn't got the PR that it really has.
No, it's been horrific. But now that the Big 12 is there and BYU is one of the flagships at this point, it's within the. I think it's. Well, I don't want to quote somebody that I know said this, but we've had big journos saying that BYU is top 3 as far as brand value is in the Big 12, and that makes a big difference.
Big 12? Is it in the Big 12?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that came from a journalist. I didn't make that up. But the bottom line is that more people are going to start seeing that.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to get into a little bit of this later, but I'm one of those BYU fans that I would love to have Utah in the Big 12 because it would automatically become the top rivalry in the conference. Yeah. And I think it just raises the profile of the entire league.
Curious. So who are the other 2 big brands in the Big 12?
Oklahoma State.
Yeah.
And then K-State, I think, has to be near the top. I really like Baylor. I have tons of respect for Baylor.
As far as brand value, though, you're thinking like, Oklahoma State, K-State.
Yes. Yeah. Those are the 2 that I would think of. Yeah.
You know, there's a sneaky brand in the Big 12, West Virginia.
You know what? I actually like West Virginia. I've enjoyed watching them over the years.
It is. They've got a huge fan base.
They do. And I respect the heck out of them. Absolutely.
All right, let's get back to the topic here. Okay, so the Ute fan perspective about BYU. We've given a little historical context about the wins and losses and everything, all relevant. When Utah entered into the Pac-12, things changed for Ute fans, okay? Not immediately. It was a fluid situation, but things did change. At first few years, BYU is still the biggest game on the schedule for a lot of Ute fans, okay? And over time, when we actually got more established in the conference, and we had rivalries in division with USC and UCLA and Arizona State, things started softening as far as like Ute fan feelings towards BYU. It wasn't, over the last 10 years, it hasn't been the biggest game on the schedule anymore.
No, it hasn't. Nope.
The Cougars. And I think that makes sense because conference titles, crowns weren't on the line.
Right.
Anything. It was, and so over time, what's happened to the rivalry from a Ute fan perspective, it's just kind of softened and gotten a little less important than it was before when we were in the same conference. And
fully justifiable, by the way.
Yeah, and here's a little dirty secret, okay? We'll talk about the dirty secret. A lot of Ute fans, felt this way. It's changed, so we'll get into that. But USC really had become the primary rival in a lot of Ute fans' eyes. It was USC. That was the biggest game, even when we had the Cougars on the schedule. When USC came to town, everyone wanted that ticket. Everyone wanted to talk about USC. It had big implications, but USC really became, in Ute fans' eyes, I'm not saying this was Trojan fan eyes, right? This is Ute fan eyes. That was the game to get a ticket to be a part of and stuff, to play. And so with the recent developments, with USC going to the Big Ten, things have changed a lot. These dynamics are changing too, where Utah finds itself in a conference right now where you really don't have a rival anymore like that.
Right.
USC.
Well, it's unfortunate too. The breaking up of the Pac-12 has been a horrible thing.
It's been horrible, no doubt. And Ute fans have taken a lot of slack from that too, on Twitter and everywhere else. And we're going to get in. Let's get into that actually. So a lot of questions are asked on why Ute fans feel so emotional, right? Like a lot of sensitivity questions and stuff. Why are they so sensitive and everything?
Right.
It's because of where we came from and what we feel like we've done and earned versus another school that, might just be a blue blood that hasn't done anything for 25 years, right? So
the last 12 years for Utah has been significant.
Absolutely. And even before that, think about the Fiesta Bowl, the Sugar Bowl. The last 20 years for Utah has been significant.
Sure.
Made a 20-year run where they tried to build this brand, had great teams, got that P5 invite, And so Utah fans feel like they've really had to earn everything, right? Nothing's been given to us at all. And so we've earned everything on the field through wins and losses. And the fact that we actually are back-to-back Pac-12 champions now, and we've been to
Yeah.
4 of the last 5 Pac-12 championship games, um, and still are disregarded. Utah fans feel disrespected. Okay?
By who?
Feel disrespected by the national media, others in the pack, namely like USC, the bigger brands, Oregon, Washington, and especially the Big 12 now. The Big 12 fan base is going after Utah, saying
Well,
we
there's
accomplished anything. I mean, that.
no, that's let's get back to that, because I don't think that has to do with your accomplishments on the field. I don't think that points to something else.
Yeah, it seems like I've heard a lot, at least in the Twitter sphere, which we know is some variation of real life.
Absolutely, yes.
It seems like a lot of Big 12 fans love to attack Utah for not winning one of the Rose Bowls the last 2 years, right? And to diminish the success of Utah, where Utah fans have felt like we've had to earn everything. Kind of like K-State fans, everything's earned, nothing's given, right? And so when you diminish somebody else's success, of course you're going to get backlash. I mean, that's how U fans feel about it. It's like we're protecting the turf that we built. You know, we've had to fight so hard for this, moving from G5 to P5, and now at a conference championship level, G5, we're building this program, and all of a sudden, you know, USC leaves, and it's all changing, right? It's all changing. It's like crumbling underneath us. That's difficult. It's hard. It's frustrating.
Right.
And so when Big 12 fans say, oh, Utah's going to get left out of like the 4 corner additions to the Big 12, or they want to kind of thumb their nose at Utah successes, of course that's not going to go over well right now.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Can we explore that a little bit? So when the separation of UCLA and USC was announced,
yeah,
and pretty much it was shock and awe for everybody in the Pac-12. And the rest of the world is looking and immediately saying, well, the 2 biggest brands are out of the conference. So immediately the first thing was, the most obvious thing was merge, right?
Right.
Merge with the Big 12. So and when I say everybody, I mean a lot of the media that I was tracking, I'm talking about media, not Twitter media, that said that would be a smart thing to do. There were recommendations to go ahead and do that. And but at that moment in time, there was an inflection point, and a choice was made to really hang on with grim death to the Pac-12, and at the same time, it was diminish the Big 12. And when you had a lot of the conversations now all of a sudden become, not because there was not a reason to join the Big 12, it was because they were better than the Big 12. And from that moment, and for the Pac-12 itself, Utah became the standard bearer for the league. You had Oregon and Washington that didn't understand why they were left out of USC and UCLA. And so for the most part, they didn't care what happened to the Pac-12, because as far as they were considering, they were going to be in the Big Ten. And that didn't happen, at least not right away. It didn't happen. And so they weren't out fighting. Honestly, the only school that was out fighting, rightfully so, trying to hang on to what they built, as you've mentioned a few times, I think that's a very, very valid reason to hang on to something. And I will tell you this, if the same thing happened to BYU with the Big 12, I can guarantee you the BYU would have done the exact same thing. Yeah. And the reason is because we're coming from a place that these other P5 conferences aren't. And that is, we're relatively new kids at the table, and they really don't care what happens to the BYUs and the University of Utahs. They want to take care of the old school boys, and that is to keep that going forward. So Utah made themselves targets by trying to hang on to that well-earned, I mean, you named it.
And it's
The
it's
12
frustrating
years.
as a Ute fan too, because where's everybody else? I mean, Oregon
Yeah,
State
they
fans
don't. Yeah,
out
that's
there,
what I'm saying. They were dropping the ball.
right? Yeah, so Oregon
Yeah,
State fans and Ute fans are like the only ones. Arizona fans could care less about
right.
the the pack, right? Arizona State fans, where are they?
Yeah, I think that's you made yourself a target. You as a fan base made yourself a target. So I don't want you. I really want to make sure I try to represent the fact that I don't think one, it had to happen, and two, I don't think it's I do think we can unring that bell. As easy as what that was to disappear, I think you get it right back by saying, okay, I'm going to be pragmatic. We're going to join your conference. And in 5 years, we're leaving you again because we're going to the Big Ten. But you need that bridge. And I think the world is pretty much saying, right or wrong, that bridge is better with something that's guaranteed with the Big 12 rather than what isn't guaranteed, and that is to the world again a hodgepodge amount of media deals. And so I don't think I don't think anything is unrecoverable. I think Utah will be right back where once they get past this, and you guys will be back at the top. So you got a good team.
Let's talk about. I want to explore why the Pac fans and Utah fans might feel the way they do to the Big 12. Okay,
Please do. That's why we're
let's
here.
talk about that a little bit more, right?
Absolutely, I want to hear it. Big
Just think
12
about this,
fans want to
Robert.
hear it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Bomber. Just think about this, okay? We're all human beings, right?
sure.
We're emotional creatures, right? Less than 2 years ago, the Pac made the decision with USC and UCLA to pass on adding every single one of the prior Big 12 teams before they added U, Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF. Seriously,
I
that's
know.
what
I
happened. The
remember.
PAC that made the decision that it was not in its best interest, maybe financially, maybe culturally. They couldn't add one school at that time when all the schools wanted to come to the PAC, right?
I totally hear you. Yeah.
I don't. That was a poor decision. Obviously, it was clearly a terrible decision.
I think in hindsight it was catastrophic.
Absolutely, I
Yeah.
agree with you on that. But then just think about being a human being. Like, okay, so you made that mistake, and you said no to all these schools as a PAC, school itself. Then
Right.
all of a sudden things change. You lose your two strongest brands. The Big 12 strengthens, and now you're not only assuming those Big 12 teams, but you're being assumed by those same teams that you turned down. Do you realize how difficult that is? Like just emotionally for any individual school to do? I mean, like it's
I
a
do
humble time, right?
understand. I do understand, but I also think that there's reality and pragmatism has to come in, and you can't hang on to that. You can't keep that saw going forever. There has to be at some point where you say, okay, it's time to move on. That's my opinion, and that's what you would hear. I think I'm representing all of Big 12 fans, and actually, I think I'm representing a majority of collegiate athletic fans.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you that's not really spoken very much, but that is going on. And
No,
that's
I know. I think people. I give yourself more credit than you are. I think people do actually. One, I think people feel sorry for you. I think especially the guys at the big table that are going to stay at the big table, they totally understand what's going on, and whether they're chuckling or they're shaking their heads because they're upset, I think they know exactly what's going on, and you do have some sympathy. But I also think that the rest of the world is saying, maybe you guys have hung on to that for too long, and what it turns out to be is not just they feel sympathy, but now all of a sudden you get the label of you're better, you think you're better than. And I'm going to tell you right now, if that's the opinion, that is not a good look from the world. No, but you're going to explore that more, so I don't want to cut you off. You have more to say about
you
that.
know what, like being in the pack seems like it's made a lot of the schools kind of fat and happy, right? With Larry Scott, everyone was
Right.
kind of in the wine and cheese club, right?
Right. Yeah.
On your yachts, have some wine and cheese, enjoy your time.
Klyavkov hasn't done you guys any favors either. Don't give him a pass.
Well, George was dealt a pretty poor hand, and we'll find out what happens with the TV deals and stuff. The pack's not dead yet, right?
Oh no, I'm not saying it is. Yeah,
and
I'm not saying it is.
and it could, I mean, in a state, it could survive and thrive in the future, but survival is key right now. And just getting a deal done.
To get that 5-year bridge, I agree with you. Yep.
5-year bridge. And
Yep.
the reason for that really is because who, meaning Pac or the Big 12, who's going to be the third super conference? I think, Bomber, you and I both agree that either the Pac or the Big 12, one of the two is going to be
some combination of all those schools. Yes,
right.
I agree.
And it's the ACC is not going to really stand much of a chance once.
No, they're going to get eaten alive back east.
Absolutely. So they're jumping over somewhere else. It's going to be the Big 12, the Pac, or a newly formed conference, likely. I mean, like, that's just really the reality of the situation. And I think survival for the Pac puts you in the running still, right?
Of course, yeah.
Right, for it to be that third conference. That's why Pac survival is so critical. I mean, yeah, this TV deal might suck, and exposure-wise might not be the best. I mean, you go with a platform perhaps like Apple.
Well, let's be clear, though. The Pac doesn't have to survive to make it into that third conference. The Pac doesn't, it has nothing to do with the Pac. In fact, it doesn't have anything to do with the Big 12. It has to do with the teams. And in the next 5 years, and this is coming from ASU's, is it president or chancellor there? He's the one who said the next 5 years is going to be about exposure. It's not about money.
Yeah.
So that exposure is what he was most concerned about. And if that means that, you know, at the end of the day, it's going to come, somebody's going to have some humble pie.
Someone's going to eat some humble pie.
Yeah.
We don't know who that is yet, but there's going to be a lot of folks eating humble pie.
Absolutely. We don't know.
The topic is an interesting one. Okay.
Sure.
Okay. This crossed my mind, and maybe let's just dialogue about this for a second. Okay.
Okay.
I get the exposure thing. Like, you want to be on TV so people can see you flipping through on the cable, and they want to flip to your game, right? Just that casual viewer, really, right? The casual viewer finding your game, if it's especially in a primetime spot. Bomber, see if you can answer this for me. How many primetime games is the Big 12 actually really going to get? Like, the SEC is going to get Grundles, the Big's going to get Grundles.
Right.
I mean, what primetime slots are you really looking at getting? Everyone's saying, oh, exposure. Are we talking about FS1 exposure? Are we talking
actually
about
see, for me, I've heard this. I'm glad you asked that question, because not a lot of people talk about it. To me, anything that has a Fox label on it or an ESPN label on it is, as far as I'm concerned, exposure. I don't have a problem with them being on the others. And I think you're going to see that well, you might not see it, but the Big 12 has been doing this for years now. And to them, their people, it's just a given. There is no ego about which one they're on. I think the concern, and really the roll of the dice that the Pac-12 is making, is that the carrier that they use, if it's an on-demand carrier, it's Amazon, or if it's Apple, or for the CW, I don't really care who it is. It's how people find you. So you mentioned that as FS1. That doesn't bother anybody that I know of.
Ratings, though, I mean, FS1 is going to drive less, around 500,000.
I don't. Well, we'll have to see, but I don't think that's true. I think BYU, wherever it goes, drives 1 to 2 million, no matter what the carrier is.
I don't think
we were getting that. We were getting that on BYU TV.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that the FS1 numbers, the ESPN2 numbers, are significantly lower, right? Then, of course.
Well, no, they're not, though. If you look at BYU, that's where they've been, is on ESPN2.
Well, you've been on ESPN, that late night stuff.
We've been on maybe 2 or 3 games a year.
You know what? You know what was actually a huge blow to the Pac is losing BYU to schedule.
Well, that was their fault. They did it themselves.
No, and BYU is in a better place for sure and stuff, but that was a major blow to the Pac conference.
Yeah, I mean, that's a time for another show. We can go off on how that all came to pass, but I have to go all the way back in history to really. But I've got a whole historical run on how that worked out.
Since we're winding down, let's circle back. Okay, so from a Ute fan's perspective on BYU, some Utah fans feel like, as heated as the rivalry is, that USC had became a huge rival for us. With USC out of the picture, there's that void again, and BYU is certainly filling it. And it seems like there's been more bantering over the last 6 months to a year than I could remember for many years prior.
Oh, for certain.
Right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm telling you what, if Utah somehow finds its way into the Big 12, the rivalry is going to get amplified to such a degree, it's going to be madness. Seriously, just think about that. If Utah and BYU got stuck in a pod in the Big 12 and
Right.
there's a conference title on the line, a playoff berth,
Yep.
the craziness we've seen in the past with this rivalry, with people just kind of losing their minds.
They do. Yeah, it's true.
We're going to see a different level that's going to be extremely exciting for both fan bases if that happens.
I'm actually hopeful that it will happen, but what I don't want is Utah fans to, and I'm hoping you and I doing this show a couple times a week will begin to turn the ship a little bit. And I really believe that I value Utah, and I think the relationship of the two schools is very, very important to the ecosystem of college football. And I want us to both stay at top of the game. How success works out, I can't tell you what it's going to look like. I know your opinion is probably different than mine,
Right.
but I think regardless, I respect Utah. I respect fans. I respect the history. The last 12 years for Utah has been amazing, and I applaud it. And I'm hoping that we can drop these idiots that are saying I don't want BYU or I don't want Utah in because that means BYU's recruiting will go down, or Utah isn't willing to come to the truck stop conference just because they're so much better than anybody at BYU or anywhere else. And I'm hoping over time, um, I don't know that heal is the right word, but we need to get back to a point where we were in the late 90s where it was mutual respect. And
Mhm.
regardless of who won the year before, it was, let's go again this year.
There's definitely some healing that's needed, and especially if Utah finds its way into the Big 12,
Right.
there's going to be a lot of healing. There's a lot of hurt going on right now based on this and that.
Right.
Not every Ute fan's an idiot out there. I know there's a lot on Twitter. Some aren't. A lot aren't. And keep in mind that most of your fan base isn't on Twitter, right, and social media platforms, and it's not a good reflection of the overall Utah fan base. And
Right. I'm
plus,
hoping we bring that up though, Ute. I want that to I want more fan engagement. You and I talked about it. That's the
yeah,
reason we came up with this channel is so we raise the awareness of your fan base. We want them retweeting and sending out our links to our shows. More people get involved. You and I both are going to reply to messages. You have a Twitter. I have a Twitter. I mean,
mhm.
all these things we should use the platforms we have to empower both our fan bases. And I think we will. I think we
Absolutely.
will make it better.
How do we make a healthy rivalry that's not toxic but extremely competitive
Right.
and fun, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Without going
Yeah.
to the top, we're going to explore that.
I can't wait. We're going to do this more. Go ahead and give your outro here. What do you want to tell everybody?
Yeah. Hey, so I'm Wild Ute. Follow me at the Wild Ute on Twitter, and most importantly, go Utes.
Go Utes. And I have no hand signs for BYU, but I want to thank you for joining me today and let everybody know that we're going to be doing these. We're going to try 1 or 2 a week. We will announce those before they come out so people have a chance to join. More importantly, subscribe, hit the like button so that we know we're doing a good job, and turn on your notifications on YouTube so that you're getting those notifications when they're coming. And most importantly, leave us comments. They can be pro BYU and anti BYU, and the same for Utah. I don't really care. We just want to be engaged.
Yep.
And I really think that we've got something that's important, and we're not going to drop it.
All right. Thanks, Bomber.
All right, thank you. We'll talk to you soon. Everybody look for us on Saturday. That's the date we're going to try to shoot for the next one. And also, please follow my at B12 Mafia. Not only do I do Utah stuff, but I do BYU, Big 12, and Pac 12. I'm a universal coverage. So everybody have a great night tonight, and I look forward to seeing you in the future. Peace.